Now, here's the crazy thing. After I finally quit Sephora, I remember I was going to church with one of my friends that I met at Sephora, who has become one of my best friends ever. She called me knowing that we were going to church, and she said, hey, Solomon, I just want you to know, I don't know how, basically she ended up inviting that manager to go to church with us. And when she told me, I just kind of did one of those. I was like, well, at first my thought was, well, okay, I guess I just won't go to church with you today. Because I wasn't in the mood to deal. You know, church is my space to praise the Lord and be blessed, and to, you know, erase the hardships of the week that just passed, and to prepare myself for the week to come. You know, I didn't want to be there with this man, but I swallowed my pride. I prayed on it, and I just said, you know what, let me just go. I'm not going to church for him, I'm going to church for him. So, you know, we met up. I saw him there, the manager, and I just figured, you know what, I'll just be cordial. Greeted him, said hello, but my friend, she made sure to sit in between us. Now, he was acting as if there was nothing wrong, as if we've never had an issue. Like, he was being very polite and everything, but I was keeping to myself. I think he noticed that, but I think he figured, you know, that I'll warm up to him. You know, we're not in the Sephora setting, so I'll warm up to him and just, you know, be cool. But it just wasn't working like that. Like, it was a lot of, you really played me out for no reason. So eventually church is over, and we decide we're gonna go to a diner. So we're in the diner, eating, conversing, talking about stuff, and of course, 3 people that worked or works at Sephora, of course we're going to talk about Sephora, even if it's a little bit. I don't know how the conversation got to this. Well, there were some things that I just won't mention that we talked about, but there were a lot of answered questions about a lot of people that got promotions that were there for a very short period of time. Just saying. So one of the things that came up somehow, you know what it was? Oh, no. One of the messages in church had to do with hate and not carrying hate in your heart for people. You can't progress in life if you have hate, and you have to forgive and ask for forgiveness. You know, it was one of those messages. And so we were talking about that also. And so he was saying, yeah, you know, I have never hated anyone. Like, I don't hate people. I just don't see the need to waste that energy. It's tiresome and this and that. He was saying all of this, and I'm sitting there and he's saying all of that, and I'm like, well, what was that you were giving to me? This is what I'm thinking in my head. And so I couldn't take it anymore. So eventually I looked at him and I go, so how long has it been since you adapted this, you know, idea of not hating, not holding on to hate or whatever? And he said, no, this has been my entire life. I'm just not a hateful person. And so I looked at him and I said, well, I mean, I sure felt like you hated me the whole time that I was working at Sephora. You made me feel like dirt. My poor friend that's sitting in between us, again, she sat between us at church, sat between us at the diner. But my poor friend, I wasn't even looking at her, but I could see her face go, just do one of those things, because it was an awkward moment. I'm well aware of that. So I saw the manager just sort of prep himself and say, all right, well, let's have this conversation. So he said everything. He let me know. I won't go into great detail on that part. That was basically everything that happened between us. Everything we talked about was between us. So he told me, you know, what was going on, why he behaved the way he behaved. And for the most part, I was right in respect to, you know, dominance and things like that. But then there were also some things happening in his life. You know, there were some family losses and stuff. And I understand that's not the easiest to deal with and whatnot. And even if that weren't the case, you know, just the fact that you're acknowledging that things were not right, I was grateful for that. But either way, the point is, he mentioned that, and I told him, well, this is how you made me feel every single time you interacted with me. And then I brought up the gift card. And he says that was the one, he admitted that was the one time where he felt hate towards me, because he thought that was so disrespectful of me to do and so embarrassing on his part, because it wasn't even like I gave the card back to him and said, I don't want it. I gave it to someone else and said, you give it to him. So it wasn't like a secret thing, you know? And I told him I did that specifically because I needed you to understand exactly what you felt when I gave back the gift card, because he was angry, like I said. He was livid. That's what I felt like every single time you spoke to me, because you always spoke to me in a belittling manner. And when I said that, he was like, damn. I mean, I know that I was being somewhat of a jerk, but my intent wasn't to make you feel like that on a constant basis. And I was like, well, you did. Point is, you know, we had the back and forth. We had, no pun intended, the come to Jesus moment. And eventually he apologized to me and I apologized to him. And, you know, we hugged it out and that was it. Now, the other managerial story is this. So there was this manager who I actually met for the first time when I did the Sephora University classes. And she had me fooled. You know, I thought that she was this dope, kind, sweet girl. She was vicious. She is vicious. She ended up being transferred to my store from a different store, obviously. And she was vicious. She would pick on me left, right, up, and down. She definitely tried to belittle me on more than one occasion, and she would purposely do it in front of cast members and or in front of customers. Like, ideally, in Sephora, they don't want to have that on the floor. They want you to pull someone to the back and converse with them backstage. Backstage. But she had this tendency to want to do it right there on the floor. And it was often specifically with me. Now, I understand. I'll admit this. I was someone who believed that your job as a manager is to manage the store. Not just the stuff that you know for sure in respect to what time this person comes, that person comes to the store, X, Y, and Z, whatever. Just the typical everyday protocol. Things pop up. If something happens and I'm uncomfortable, I have the right as an employee to come to you as the manager and say, that thing is not good, that thing is not okay, that thing is not right. And it's making me uncomfortable and making me unable to complete my task as an employee. And if I can't complete my task, then the business is going to suffer. And I don't mean to say like, you know, me specifically, Solomon, if I can't do what I need to do, then, you know, we're not going to make money. That's how it should be for anybody who's working in any retail store. So I had no issues with telling managers straightforwardly that, look, you're the manager. This thing is not okay. You need to fix that so that things can be right and so that I can do my job the best that I can. Now, there's nothing wrong with saying that, because that's what you're supposed to do. There's something wrong if I, as an employee, have to tell you that as my manager in the store. But the thing that's wrong there is not with me, it's with you. Because if I have to say it to you, then you're not doing your job as a manager. Don't be mad at me because I'm making you feel as if you're inadequate. I'm not making you feel anything. You are inadequate if you're not paying attention to the things that you're supposed to do. So I was very active in calling these things out, particularly because these managers, the bad managers, were very quick to call you out and make a big thing if you made one mistake. You could do 20 excellent things for the day, but the one time you make a mistake, it's a huge thing. You do this all the time. And there was this misunderstanding that if I said all you ever do is the only time you speak to me or to this person or to that person is whenever you see something bad. You don't ever say anything when the work is good. They took that as, me saying that, I want you to treat me as if this is a kindergarten class. Every time I do my job properly, I want you to acknowledge it and reward me. No, I don't need you to reward me for doing my job. That's what my paycheck is. I came to work and did my job, and I got my paycheck because I was here for a certain amount of hours and I followed protocol. I just don't need you to look for an excuse to exert your managerial power. Just do your job, manage. Don't try to be some power-hungry, idiotic fool. And those of you who do decide to go and work at Sephora or any other retail place, understand that you have the right to do that. Don't walk up into the interview saying, this is what I expect, as you being my employer. But understand that you don't have to be at work feeling stressed out because of management. If you're doing your job properly, breathe and be content and know that you're doing your job properly, plain and simple. If managers need you to do something different or to work harder or faster, let them tell you humanely and you adjust accordingly. Plain and simple. So I digress. So this was something that I would do very often. Well, I shouldn't say very often, but whenever it was necessary, I did it and I spoke up. I was very vocal with people that I thought were terrible, with managers that I thought were terrible. So I did that to her quite often. Because she was someone who felt that she pretty much graduated high school and then started working at Sephora, and then she's pretty much been there for 10 years since then. That's the type of girl she was. So you couldn't tell her that she don't know nothing about Sephora. You couldn't tell her anything. So for someone like me to be like, you could do that better as a manager, she didn't take lightly to that. So, however, I found myself getting to a point where I started feeling as if I could grow to hate her. And the fact is, I never, regardless of how much people got on my nerves at work, I never feel as if I can hate someone. But I felt it for her because she was vicious and such a liar. So I thought, you know what, Lord, let me approach her and just try to find some common ground. So that's what I did. I approached her. I said, hey, things have been rather rough, especially this past week. Is it possible for me to converse with you in the office just to say some things to you and hopefully come to some common ground, whatever? And she, fell into her fake little, oh yes, absolutely, let's go to the office and, X, Y, and Z. So I go into the office, I tell her everything, I explain everything to her. And I said to her, the reason that I wanted to come have this conversation with you is because I felt myself growing. I felt myself growing towards hating you. And I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to hate you. And so I'm just trying to address this now, And everything I said, all she heard was the word hate. And she goes, wow. Well, hate is a very strong word. And so I look at her and I'm like, well, I didn't say that I hate you. I said I feel myself going towards hating you, and I don't want to get to that point. So I'm trying to have this conversation with you now so that we can work civilly, work like civilized human beings, and both be content. Because ultimately I seemed to be her problem child in the store. So she said something that I hate. This is something I hate to hear people say when people say, I'm apologizing to you, and they go, I'm sorry that you feel that way, X, Y, and Z. Disclaimer, that is not an apology. You can't apologize to someone, but at the same time, place blame on that person. I'm sorry that you. No, it don't work like that. That's not an apology. And that's what she offered to me. And I can't remember exactly. I might have said, well, that's not really an apology, but I think it's probably best that I just take what I can get. It was something like that. Because I just wasn't going to fake it out. No. It is what it is. You're giving me what you're giving me, so I'm going to give you what I give you. And so, yeah. But after I had that whole ordeal with her, things were just absolutely never the same. I had learned that she was saying to different cast members, not even other managers, but other cast members, that, you know, she would go up to people and say, do you know what Solomon said to me the other day? He came into the office just to tell me that he hates me. Isn't that disgusting? It's pretty much the way she spoke. Sorry, but I'm not sorry. Demi Lovato. You know, and low key, you know, there were people, even managers, that came to me and said, Solomon, did you say this to her? And even cast members that came to me and said, yo, Solomon, I don't even know why she's telling me this, but yo, she said that you said X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I never said that. And I'm like, if you're going to, I basically told people exactly what went down in that office. And people believed me because other people had their experiences with this manager. But my experience with her, that's what really pushed me to leave and go to overnight, because that happened before I moved to overnight as well. And so I remember, like, this woman was clearly crazy, because then now when she would see me, mind you, we never really confer. Like, she was one of the people, like, that I would never eat. That I'm not exactly sure where this stopped just now, but basically what I was getting to is that I'm the type of dude where if I walk into somewhere, some place, some building, whatever, if people are in there, I'm gonna say hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever. I'm gonna acknowledge everyone in some form, in some way. With her, I got to the point where I didn't even do that, because I was just like, yo, she might tell somebody that I walked in and said, I want to stab you, and really I just said, good morning. You know? So I just kept my head forward when it came to her. Just completely disacknowledged her, because I just wanted to keep myself safe, to be honest. So with her, I never, you know, had any kind of moment. You know, I never got to have a come to Jesus moment with her like I had with the previous manager that I spoke on. Not that I necessarily wanted one, and not that she would ever give it anyway, because she's not one to admit to her wrongdoings. But it is what it is. The reason I tell those two stories is to show you that for me, both of those managers were an experience, but I at least had a good outcome, a good ending with one, and with the other, I didn't have a good ending. I didn't have an ending at all. While both, for me, in my experience, were bad managers, I at least found out why one manager behaved in the manner that he did. And the other one, from what I understand, because I still got friends that work at Sephora, the other one I understand is still just as crazy and, you know, in denial as when I left.